The mailman stiffened when he saw me, standing barefoot in the driveway, holding a half-eaten sandwich in one hand and a shovel in the other. I wasn't mad at him, just shocked by the letter he gave me. It blamed me for constructing a luxury swimming pool in back of my shed and demanded $50,000 from the Oak Ridge HOA. Me, a man who raises peppers in worn pots and hasn't swam since the 80s. In their minds, I had built an unauthorized glistening water palace. That envelope was only the start. It contained official HOA letterhead, offense codes, and a breakdown of fines that sounded more like a mafia shakedown. I settled back into my porch swing, devoured my sandwich, and gazed at that figure. $50,000 for a non-existent pool on property I'd held since 35 years ago. My backyard? Nothing more than dusty, uneven terrain, only suitable for a kiddie pool. The one blue thing way in the back was a ragged, tarped-over bunch of hay bales. No pipes, no water. Only dirt and fantasies of a peaceful retirement. Enraged with incredulity, I arrived at the HOA office, an erstwhile neighborhood community center that had long since devolved into a fortress surrounded by scrawny, mismatched chairs and snide grass-height posters. I insisted I see the board. Out trotted Eleanor Prescott. Perfect hair, perfect smile, cut as shattered glass. She waved my notice of violation like it put her to sleep. "Mr. Bennett, your unauthorized pool is over here," she said, showing a blurry satellite image, a blue blur behind my shed. "That's a tarp," I replied. She didn't flinch. "The fine remains unless you can show otherwise. Hearings on the notice." Dismissed like garbage. Outside, my neighbor Carl pulled me aside. "You're not the first," he warned. "Eleanor turns everything around, slaps a fine on. Last year, she deemed Tom's shed dangerous, forced him to rebuild." My gut growled. I had been friendly, paid dues, kept lawn manicured. Now they were coming at me with a $50,000 hammer. That evening, flashlight in mouth, I scanned the tarp. Dry hay, no dampness, only squirrels darting. Rusty, my old hound, stared like I'd gone crazy. Perhaps I had. Morning brought a bigger gut blow, a county letter, a lien against my property. Shaking hands, I understood. They weren't merely threatening to fine me. They were threatening my home, my life's work. I brewed coffee, gazed out the window, then drew out an old file on my desk. Blueprints, permits, maps of my properties over the course of 40 years as a civil engineer. I knew land law like my own heartbeat. Eleanor wanted a war. She'd get one. I'd battle with evidence and with determination, the type that results from constructing wastewater systems for whole communities. In the county assessor's office, a dingy room that reeked of dust and weary paper, I asked for all records associated with my property. Marge, the clerk, gave me a stack tall enough to kill a man. Browsing through, I discovered the inspection form that validated the lien. No signature by a licensed assessor, just scrawled initials. Dated a Sunday, the office was closed that day. Their evidence? A grainy free map snapshot, a red circle around my bruised tarp. Marge whispered, "Eleanor's cousin works here." Forced satellite imaging into policy. My jaw clenched. This wasn't incompetence. It was systematic dishonesty. At home, Carl had more tales of terror, widows punished for unauthorized roses, veterans punished for dangerous mailboxes. Eleanor's gimmick? Twist ambiguous bylaws into fines too minor to lawyer up, but large enough to sting. I pulled the tarp off, revealing naked dirt, and then called the local news. Jenna, an eager young reporter on the lookout for scandal, arrived. I explained it all to her. The tarp, the notice, the so-called pool. Carl explained his hazardous fence. Jenna jumped up and down on the dry ground, laughing on camera. "No pool here, folks, just hay and dust." Rusty barked in appreciation. That evening, Eleanor's black SUV drove by my house. She tore onto my porch, heels gouging the pavement. "You've embarrassed the board," she growled. I gestured at the vacant lot. "You embarrassed yourself. I merely revealed reality." Flushed with anger, she spat, "This isn't over," and stormed off. almost knocking my mailbox over. A week or so later, a notice, HOA meeting. I was prepared. Behind the stale-tasting community hall, Eleanor was seated front row center, boarded up by committee members, including a young fellow named Owen, who looked to make a fast exit. I set it all out, the tarp, the phony inspection, the lien, and played Jenna's viral video. Whispers became screams. When I asked Owen if he had inspected my property, he shifted uncomfortably. I was instructed to sign, not inquire. The room exploded. Neighbors yelled about fake fines, dead lawns, flattened mailboxes. Eleanor's gavel went unheeded. She had lost the room. I slipped out quietly, allowing her chaos to devour itself. This spooky monument to what had nearly suffocated us. One day I spotted a moving truck out front. A young couple was moving in, boxes in hand, smiling, no fear crossing their faces. A new beginning. Life isn't always wrapped up in tidy bows, but sometimes if you're obstinate enough or desperate enough, you rip out the nasty roots and seed something new. It's slower, it's tougher, but it endures. Carl, my weathered neighbor, planted a peach tree where his mailbox once stood, the one Eleanor had deemed a threat to community safety. Each morning, he'd wave with dirt beneath his nails and a smile so broad it softened even his sun-scorched face. We all evolved in small ways. I excavated the old faded tarp that began it all, folded it up, and hung it on the workshop wall. A trophy of another sort. Owen, once nervous and diffident, came into his own with unexpected steel. He called on every house in person, collecting ideas and listening without prejudice. The boy who had once been bullied into silence now spoke with a voice strong enough to bear the burden of a community's hopes. On the following town barbecue, Owen climbed a folding table, not a gavel, a threat, and decreed the block would have its very first ever block party, no permits, just music, laughter, and food. The hurrah that erupted was not just in approval, it was in support of freedom that we'd wrestled back. This evening, fairy lights outlining porches and fences twinkled like fireflies. Rusty snored on either side of my chair, hot dog abandoned half-eaten in his paws. I glanced over at the neighbors, some who'd once nodded barely, now exchanging recipes and jokes. I felt it in my chest. We were no longer a terrified community held hostage. We were a patchwork family bonded by a collective refusal to something greater than ourselves. And I saw something else. Justice doesn't have to be a deafening roar. Sometimes it seeps in like dawn light, quiet but unrelenting. Until you wake up one day and notice the shadows are gone. The imitation pool was gone, but the ripples it created reformed everything. And somewhere, hidden within those ripples, was Rusty, blissfully lapping water from his plastic throne, the rubber duck floating like a little, absurd crown.